Welcome to the Kind Futurist. We are your hosts, Helen Mekonen
and Urmilla Khan. We'll feature inspirational leaders and everyday heroes as we open the dialogue on what being wealthy really means for generations to come.
In this episode, we're going to talk about the E in ESG, which is environmental. As we slice it, we are going to be really capturing three elements of it. So the first is the source, so agriculture sourcing, the land, animal, and plant welfare. The second piece we're going to be talking about what is in our food, what are we consuming, and then lastly we're going to be talking about the impact and how to move forward. So agriculture, sourcing, land sourcing. So this is so important. These are the pieces that, how do we nourish ourselves? How do we nourish our bodies?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I think when we look at land as well, and the ownership of land, really, who owns land? Who owns this earth? This is a place that we all call home. I think we're all accountable and should be responsible for creating whatever impact we can towards maintaining and creating a healthier lifestyle for all, right? In terms of Indigenous rights and the history of
well, you're absolutely right, because it's not as much as it is about who it belongs to, but also looking at the indigenous plants and living species on all of the lands across the globe. How do we continue to make sure that they are still in existence? With one of my little ones is passionate about dinosaurs, and we're just learning that ginkgo trees existed centuries and thousands of years ago. That's phenomenal that particular species of plant is still here in existence. And so how do we maintain more?
Absolutely. And then I think it's also important how people interpret the environment, right? Like how your little one interpreted that. What kind of interpretation do we want to encourage, I suppose, right? In generations to come from now. I know, Helen, that you have a close knit with food and how it's grown, and perhaps you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, global food sustainability is so important. How we grow our food, where we source our food from is extremely important. There are a number of local urban farmers. We know one, which is the one that you were speaking about.
Absolutely.
It's called We Got Plants, where they're experimenting on specific crops that are going to continue to sustain not only the local community, but hopefully the global community as well.
No, absolutely. So thinking about plants being a form of wealth, right? Long-term wealth. It's not just about money. I mean, success is defined in so many ways. How do we have plants be a form of wealth?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And in terms of thinking about sustainability, wealth, what are we injecting now in our systems, in our bodies? When you're thinking about bioengineered food, pesticides, these are pieces that are extremely important to keep at the top of our mind. I mean, if we look at our Canadian environmentalists or environment advocates, David Suzuki continues and has always pushed the envelope around pesticides and controlling pesticides being one aspect of his foundation and a lot of the things that he talks about very openly and with a megaphone always.
Mm-hmm. And as we look at what's really in our food as well, you looked at a national, individual who inspires so much change. There are countless globally, and in fact, everybody can be an activist globally, nationally, locally, wherever you are. There's one that came to mind. Her name is Dr. Vandana Shiva, and she's a physicist, an environmental activist, and a food sovereignty and anti-globalization advocate. So she founded an organization organization called the Research Foundation for Science, Technology, and Ecology. The name of it is Navdanya. And essentially, it promotes biodiversity conservation, organic farming, and the rights of farmers. So she really looks at, where does the seed come from? Does this seed, say, belong to an organization? Does it belong to the farmer? What is the authenticity, and how do we, as we mentioned initially, right? That diversity of looking at how that seed originated allows freedom and creates further potential. Another thing she looked at is development. When we think about development, we think about buildings and, the economy. Development, though, is not an economic term. It's a human ecological term. And so, it's not about justifying deforestation. Rather, it's about transformation from within.
Wow. That's deep, because, when you think about, personal development, how does it then reflect into, your network, your community, you as a leader? If you are open to the way that you continue to grow as a person, then for sure that impact is going to be, contagious. And you can pollinate. We can use all of these terms that really tie back into the topic of environmental. And speaking about local, there are so many eco farms that are popping up globally, where again, individuals want to learn how to sustain themselves, their families, and their communities.
You make a good point, Helen. It's what can we do? And so most importantly, I think, is being guided by one's own conscience, right? And where does that courage come from, and how important is that to us, right? That leads into the environmental impact of the decisions that we make. I'm reminded of another international individual who started a movement called the Save Soil movement. And it's really to look at what's in our soil and what will be in our soil, 10, 20, 30, 40, 100, 5,000 years from now. It's a global movement, and it's focusing on national policies and actions towards increasing the organic content in cultivable soil. Because if it keeps depleting, what's really going into our food? How are we keeping that cycle going?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about soil, it's rich in so many nutrients, minerals, vitamins that are essential for growth, for plant growth, and then therefore, obviously, the food that we ingest. And so, how do we continue to make positive impacts to the way that we grow food, to the way that we are able even to regenerate healthy soil, so that we can continue to have great food at our table and nourish ourselves. Positive impacts to the environment. There are countless of things that we can think about. To your point earlier, you don't have to be an environmentalist. You don't have to be someone that dedicates their life to this. You just have to do your part in really bringing forward a positive way of living.
Where am I spending my money, right? Where am I investing my money? Is it with organizations that truly positively impact the environment? What am I doing? How can I reduce my energy use? And obviously bills that you have to pay as a result of it. That is a motivator, but the true benefit is just a cleaner, healthier planet, right?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
I think the one other thing we meant to talk about was with respect to climate change, and when we hinted on this, what is the organizational responsibility really when we're looking at things like renewable energy, packaging, waste, the implications of retail sourcing and the supply chain, how food gets from, or anything really gets from one point to the other, and the disasters, things like oil spills, how they greatly impact the environment for generations to come. So I believe the focus really is to what can we do today that will create lasting impact.
Agreed.
On the environment.
100%. And we have voices, and we have organizations, and we are able to make these changes now for the future. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for tuning in to the Kind Futurist. Join us next time as we continue these great conversations.